Bem-vindos, everybody. It's the only Portuguese word. I know, you know, it's Portuguese is really difficult in my opinion. And wow, look at that. You're not living in squares, Zoom squares. Wow, you're alive. Unbelievable. Wow. Actually, this is the first time again on stage within 2 years. Actually, I was giving a keynote in Madrid around this time when it all started. You know. Well, anyway, we're not going to talk about COVID today. Well, a little bit yes, because there is something in it, but anyway. But we are going to talk about the Cyberdangers we got in 2022 and we will have in the future, and also which we got in the past. Oh yes. Something about me, if you don't know me, I'm what they call a security evangelist. Now, it is not a religious thing, no. It is just the front end of the security lab. I'm the speaking part. That's what I am. So I try to explain all those difficult technical terms in layman's words. That's what I do. And I wrote a couple of books, actually, as well. One of them you can read. That's Cyberdangers in English. I also wrote a cyber thriller, but it's in Dutch, unfortunately. So I hope there is somebody who can sponsor the translation or something. Anyway, enough about me, because you will hear a lot about a couple of stories I got in my life, and oh yes, a little bit about the company I work for. I work for GData. GData is a typical antivirus company. It seems that we are the inventors of commercial antivirus. That's at least what Wikipedia is telling us. And Wikipedia is always right, isn't it? Well, anyway, if you have the possibility to visit us, I would say do it. Are there any Trekkies in the room? You know, Star Trek Trekkies? No, nothing? If I do this in the US, you know, everybody is putting his hand up. But because, you know, we have something like the bridge over there. That's our entrance of the building, the reception. Anyway, enough about who I am, enough about GData. But let's go back to, well, to 1989 and try to think where you were at that moment. And for most of you, this will not be possible because you're not old enough, I think. But for me, I still remember it very well. In 1989, actually, I was working for an insurance company in Antwerp, in Belgium. And, you know, it was December, in the beginning of December, and suddenly my manager came to me. It was on a Monday morning. Eddy, I got something for you. Oh, yes? Well, yeah, I got a floppy, and it seems to be an interesting one. Well, it's AIDS information disk, and maybe you can try to find out if that floppy can be used by our customers. So can you have a look at it? I thought, yeah, why not? Of course, because this was part of my job at that moment. So it was delivered with a leaflet, the typical leaflet, you know, an end-of-use license agreement and something like that. So I insert the floppy inside my computer. And this was the message which came up at that moment. There was an introduction, there was something like a questionnaire which came up about the AIDS disease, the biological AIDS disease. And I thought, yeah, well, interesting. So I gave my input inside the questionnaire, and then there was, it was printing out a whole, something like statistical information about the AIDS disease. I thought interesting, but not interesting enough for our customers. So I went back to my manager and I told him, well, I don't think it really is very interesting for our customers. I possibly will throw the floppy away. It's not important. Well, that's what I thought on the Monday. I worked on, and well, I worked on Tuesday, nothing happened. And I was there on Wednesday when I fired up again my computer. And this was the first thing which appeared on my system. I thought, what is this again? Now, the only thing I could do at that moment was clicking on the return key. And then this came up. And it was asking me to send $189 in an envelope to a PO box in Panama. And I couldn't do anything anymore on my computer. It has encrypted my data, and, well, the only thing I could put in was typing again enter and put in something like a decryption key. Think about that. Yeah. I thought, this is a bug. That's the first thing I thought at that moment, but it wasn't a bug. Actually, I was confronted with the very, very, very first ransomware. Yes, this was the AIDS information diskette. But I didn't realize it at that moment. Well, so actually, if you looked at the diskette itself and the creation and the damage it did, it was unbelievable, you know. It was created actually by a biologist, Dr. Joseph L. Pop. And it was given away as a freebie during the World Health Organization conference in 1989. And it was also, think about that, sent out to the mailing list of PC World magazine. 20,000 copies. Think about that, back in 1989. Sending it out by normal mail. How much? Well, this has costed a lot of money, you know. Unbelievable. Anyway, the problem is that it caused a lot of damage. So a lot of researchers actually, well, their work was vanished. So a lot of research, a lot of AIDS research, well, disappeared. Because they couldn't access their PCs and their networks, more or less, at that moment in time anymore. So, but what did I do wrong? I did something wrong, isn't it? Yeah, well, I didn't read the end-of-user license agreement. Because if you read the end-of-user, well, if I would have read the end-of-user license agreement, it was clearly stated that I was leasing, leasing that software. Come on. Well, of course, that's what they all say. It was leasing the software. Now, the good thing was that I got a solution for it. It took me about 15 minutes to decrypt my hard disk. And I thought, yeah, well, nothing special. Well, that's what I thought. And then Friday, I've heard millions of research was, millions of euros vanished, of course. At that time, there was not, well, they didn't talk about euros. It seems that it was a very big problem in the world. And I thought, come on, this is nothing, this is not problematic. This is something like, well, I got a solution for it. So I phoned them, and I phoned media, and I got my first media appearance. Yeah, well, this was me. Yeah, when I still didn't got the white hair I got today. This is possibly because of all the viruses I found in that history since then. Anyway, it pushed me inside the security industry. But after a while and after working so long in the industry, I thought, wow, because now we are still facing ransomware. Ransomware, unbelievable, isn't it? That we're still facing the same exact malware even after more than, well, 30 years. That means that it is successful, and that's the real reason. And we see these numbers, of course. It is the biggest problem. It is the biggest security-related problem these days. And I was part of the whole security history of it. Unbelievable, but true. And you see that a lot of problems, of course, are coming up. But still, ransomware is indeed considered as one of the biggest problems, because there is a lot of money involved with ransomware, and that's part of the reason, of course. And also, we see that every year we have more companies attacked by ransomware. But I'm not only going to talk about ransomware today. And the question is, of course, is it stopping? Will it stop at some point? Actually, I don't think so. But if you look at ransomware, it's just a very tiny, 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 tiny part of all the malware we see these days. Actually, we are reaching more now, well, we're reaching something like 1 billion kind of malware. And ransomware is something like 0.0% of everything we see. So there is a lot of more threats out, and there are a lot of more problems related to cybersecurity, of course. But it is the visible part. It's something you see because your network is locked, because you need to pay the ransom. Otherwise, you can't do anything anymore on your systems. But how do we get infected? Because there is a lot of misconfusion. There is a lot of confusion about that. So what are the most known modus operandi? Well, we'll have a look at it, because you will always see that there is something like a common factor appearing all the time. One of them is what I call the user. And the user is a human, isn't it? Well, at least at this moment, we are all humans which are still working with computers. And what we mostly do, we are mostly surfing on the internet. And if we're surfing on the internet, of course, there is something behind the screen which is, of course, happening. Because if you're going to a website, you're actually downloading some small code on your, well, in your browser, actually. And that small code can maybe interrogate your PC to find out that, well, you installed the latest updates. Because that's what exploit kits are doing. And that is just one of the possible attacks on your system. Of course, we all know everything else. And everything else is, of course, maybe the other big problem. It's the spamming of all the mails we see these days. And we all know these kind of things. Still, people are clicking on it. If somebody sees something like this, and there is even nothing delivered with it, people are opening it. Because we are curious. Because we are naive. Because we want to see more. Oh, there is a picture delivered with it. Or, oh, an invoice. Oh, it's even not for me. Well, you still are going to open it because you want to see what that invoice is, for who it is, and how much he or she is going to pay. Isn't it? That's a typical thing. That's typical human behavior. And that's, of course, what cyber criminals know. And then you think, oh, come on. This couldn't be happening in 2021 or 2022, isn't it? And are companies still clicking on those, well, attachments? I can tell you, yes. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples, real ones. And this is a very interesting example. This one is the link which was sent out to, well, one of the people working inside the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands. She or he, I don't know, clicked on that OneDrive download link. And he or she installed the malware on one of the systems. Of course it didn't react. Of course it was maybe something like a stupid kind of download and he got an error or she got an error or whatever. But afterwards, the whole university was infected with ransomware. So yes, it is still happening. This was, well, I call this spear phishing, but it is a very light form of spear phishing. Spear phishing is really phishing, but targeted, of course, to one specific person. This was a small, light spear phishing attack to me. Actually, I speak more or less daily to the press. And with the Ukraine cyber war at this moment, oh my God, I got way too many questions at this moment. But anyway, so I speak, like I'm saying, very often to the press. And this newspaper magazine, actually a Belgian newspaper magazine, somebody was sending me something like a PDF file. And I thought, okay, interesting. And I know that guy because he's actually a journalist. And I thought, okay, this could be interesting, but why is he sending it now to me? And it seems to be on a OneDrive. And, oh, that's his name, Thierry Goumen. Het Nieuwsblad is indeed the newspaper. And then I saw his phone number. That's not his phone number. Actually, that's the phone number of a plumber. It's not the phone number of the journalist. But you see, these kind of things are very realistic. And of course, if they want to target you much more, there are a lot of possibilities. Because we are posting a lot of things on our social media channels, isn't it? And you can think, oh, that guy could be interesting in football, or that guy could be interested in chess, or whatever. So if you send me something about, well, maybe chess, for instance, I'm very interested because I'm a chess player. So you see, and if I click on one of those links, I could maybe install the malware on my system. But, so the human factor is always the problem, in my opinion, or is mostly part of the bigger problem. I'm not saying that it is the biggest problem. I'm saying that it's always related to a cyber problem. A typical a LinkedIn invitation. Well, this one was, of course, if you hover over it, you can, of course, typically see that it doesn't go to LinkedIn, but that it goes to a Vietnamese address. And a lot of other questions. Oh yeah, this is a nice one. All men over here, well, a lot of men will click on it. I can tell you. They will click on it because they want to see more. Yes. And this is not me. This is human behavior. Well, women as well, you know. Women also click on these kind of things. Yeah. Anyway, so what are the common delivery methods? Well, if you look at it, it's typical. It's the spam and the phishing mails, as I told you. And that's actually the biggest problem we see. But it's also poor user practices, because people don't think about it, or maybe clicking on the wrong links, or maybe doing something which could cause another problem afterwards. Weak passwords, lack of cybersecurity training. Man. So like I'm saying, and this is the reason why I created actually a stupid law, in my opinion, but still. And it's in my book, actually. A cybersecurity problem seems to be always related to the technical factor and to the human factor. Take away that human factor, and you don't have the cyber problem anymore. In a lot of big cyber attacks, even happening at this moment, humans are always involved. I'm going to give you more examples later on. But let's now go to the administrator. Because the administrator as well is, of course, also a human, isn't it? And that administrator of the IT network is doing a lot. And actually, well, you know, these days, or the IT department, which is, of course, helping them, and, of course, all the security people inside the company are also helping that IT administrator. So it's not only administrator, you know, it's just, you know, the whole bunch of security people involved in the work. But they need to do a lot. And I can tell you, this is not an easy job. And I think also The next speaker is definitely also going to talk about that maybe a little bit, I don't know. But yes, I see her nodding. Yeah, I see her, yeah. Okay, perfect. Anyway, so if you go to a if you have a big security center, you have a lot of servers involved, it's always not easy to make them work properly. And that's a big underestimated thing, that a lot of people think that everything is working very easy and fine on those advanced servers. But it isn't the case. If you have like 100 or 1,000 servers or even more which you need to work on, it is very, very difficult. And then it's always the same thing. If you look at all the hacks, it's always, well, it's always related to the same technical security-related problems. And these are the typical things which are going wrong. One of the things is how the much of the servers you connect to the internet, the higher the possibility they are going to be attacked. That's a typical thing. That's actually a rule these days. And so you need to be very careful if you put a server on the internet. So one of the things is definitely if it's an RDP server, Citrix or whatever, please be very careful with that, because it is we've seen a lot of exploits, we've seen a lot of vulnerabilities inside these kind of servers, exploited of course and misused into cyber attacks. We also see that sometimes VPNs are completely misconfigured or wrong implemented, meaning that, or not completely not implemented at all. Can you believe that in a normal situation like this? And then of course machine not patched. Yeah, you all know, or you all should know, that a not patched machine is always vulnerable and is always be a problem. And if a not patched machine is on the internet, it will have a problem in maybe a couple of minutes or a couple of hours. Just wait and you will see. And there are still companies which are still using not multi-factor authentication. Unbelievable. Now, I'm saying now, companies not using multi-factor authentication, but are you using multi-factor authentication? So if you have Twitter, Facebook, Google installed or whatever, have you all installed multi-factor authentication? If you have multi-factor authentication on everything like Twitter, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, who can put his hands on? Up? Okay. But you are the wrong public, because you are busy with security. You are over here. You are listening to my speech. You are listening to my lecture. And you are the interested people. But if you go around over here, it's not always the case. Oh no. And that's the big problem. Oh. And of course, yes, this one. Bad security configuration. I've seen about 1,000 companies or more which didn't configure their security solutions correctly. So security solutions are not always easy to configure. So they should be configured in a good way. I've seen a lot of misconfigurations. And of course, if a security solution is not configured well, what do you think is happening then to the company? Well, of course, the company is vulnerable. And that's also part of the problem. So think about that. Now, with COVID also changed a lot of things, isn't it? If we look at COVID-19, we all started to work or to study from home, isn't it? At least in where I'm living. So And that seems also to be causing a lot of other security-related problems. And you still remember this one, you know, in the beginning when we all tried to work with Zoom. Yeah, well, of course, Zoom wasn't secure at all. And, well, there was even no password in Zoom. And yeah, people could get inside without any problem. Of course, Zoom is much better secured these days. And it's not only Zoom, also Microsoft Teams and all the others. So they improved a lot, which is a good thing. But, oh yes, by the way, Zoom. Like I'm telling you, you know, so it always reminds me at like something like this, you know. If I look at Zoom, if I look at a webinar, oh my God, yeah. This is Zoom or Teams. Nobody from Microsoft or Zoom inside the public? No? Okay. Anyway, then you think it's finished. We will not have any problems anymore with related to Zoom or to video conferencing. Well, it's not completely true. In November 2020, when, well, the Zoom problems were a little bit less because, you know, it was much more secure at that moment, there was a big kind of video conference between all the European countries. And it was all the Ministry of Defenses, which are, so the defense part of all the European countries were involved actually in that kind of video conferencing thing, meeting. And guess what? Well, there was actually a Dutch guy, a Dutch journalist, who succeeded in breaking inside that video conference of the whole European Union. Then you think, how is that possible? Well, it was possible because the Minister of Defense in the Netherlands actually posted a picture online. And this was the picture she posted online. Now, if you look very careful, you can easily find out, of course, how you can get in. Of course, I blanked out a lot of the stuff, but you see how easy it could be just by one stupid person, actually, who just put a picture online, making a picture of the screen of her laptop. Now, look very careful to that screen of her laptop. By the way, that minister from the Netherlands, she, look very careful to this line over here. A barber shop for a girl or a woman? This is for man. This was not her PC. You can easily see also the login page of Google and something like that. Possibly this is maybe the PC or maybe the laptop from her husband, because she was working from home. Yeah. So you see, people make mistakes, even on levels where you think they shouldn't make a mistake, but it's still happening. Ah, well. No, well, there is much more, of course. OVH, hosting provider, goes down during plant maintenance. Well, maintenance, what can go wrong? Yeah, well, human mistakes. And of course, it took down a couple of servers, isn't it? Yeah, well. Now think about this one. The Facebook outage. I'm not going into detail about the Facebook outage, but the whole world was talking about Facebook at that moment, because they couldn't exit their Facebook anymore. And, of course, it was a big problem. Was it related to a human at that moment? It's still very unclear, of course. But if you look at it, and I discussed it with a couple of people inside of Facebook, it actually was possibly a human mistake. And then Log4Shell, I know. I'm not going into detail about that one, but still, I'm not saying that Log4Shell, that the vulnerability or the vulnerability itself is because it was, of course, created by a human, that this is a human mistake. No. But I'm telling you about Log4Shell, of course, and about the attacks that we saw, of course, the past months. At this moment, it's less, and we don't see a lot of problems anymore. But still, did everybody patched their servers? Did everybody patched their software? I can't tell. We can't tell. Some people possibly didn't patch their systems. And that could become a problem in the future. Because they will be maybe not attacked at this moment, but they could be maybe attacked in the future. So this is still an underestimated problem. Maybe, or maybe not. At least we don't see a lot of problems anymore, depending on the Log4Shell vulnerability. And then, of course, we saw some infrastructure attacks. I'm pretty sure also the next speaker will also talk about that one. So I'm not going into detail too much about this. But of course, even before the war, we saw Viper malware in Ukraine. So it wasn't new. And of course, even before we saw malware, Viper malware, Shamoon, for instance, in other occasions. So it wasn't new. But still, this is an underestimated problem. And a lot of the Viper malwares we've seen, actually, the main entry point is or was a human, because they clicked on the wrong link or they opened a Word document or spreadsheet or whatever, which downloaded afterwards the malware on the system. So, well, also, we saw it, you saw it over here, isn't it? Vodafone. It's not that long ago, isn't it? So infrastructure is a very, very interesting subject, because if it is attacked in a very good way, it could take down a whole country. So we need to be very careful. And also infrastructure attacks are very, very problematic, are becoming problematic, because we see a lot of ransomware attacks even going to infrastructure, to the infrastructure sector. But that isn't, of course, the last problem we touched today. Mobile dangers. And the question is, of course, where stops the network? These days, the network doesn't stop anywhere, because you all have your own, well, server in your pocket, isn't it? Our operating systems, our smartphones are so convenient and practical, but they have the power of really big machines these days. This is the global market share of the mobile operating systems, and this is what you normally have. Maybe a quick hands up over here. Who has an iPhone? Using iOS, okay. Who has Android? Yeah, this confirms more or less what I see over here. And this is also typical. Now, if you are really a hacker or somebody inside the cybercrime scene, what are you going to attack? Well, the return on investment is much higher if you're attacking Android at this moment than if you attack, of course, iOS. So that's also the reason why we see much more attacks related to Android. We have millions of malicious Android apps, and we have indeed several, well, thousands of malicious iOS apps. But still, it's a big problem. And I still can't get to it, you know. But a lot of people seem not to install security software on their phone. Well, on iOS you can't do that, because Apple has everything in his hands. And sorry, but Apple doesn't allow the security industry to install security software on their system. We are not allowed. That's the real reason why you don't have security apps on your iOS system. Yes, there are some security apps, yes. And just like a web filter, and yes, they can block phishing sites. And that's it. But scanning for malicious apps, forget it. We are not allowed to do it. For Android, at least, they allow us to do that. Whew, thanks God. That's a good thing. However, still, you know, people are making the wrong decisions. And they are really making the wrong decisions. This is a very good example. This is mobile malware. This is Flubot and also T-Bot. It's more or less like the same thing. And, you know, what is it doing? Actually, it's sending out text messages, first of all. It's sending out text messages, and it looks like you get a text message, and that it's from a delivery service, from something like a post office, or from DHL, or from another, you know, big parcel delivery kind of service. I don't know which you have over here, but there are so many of them. And then it seems, oh yes, and by the way, if you want to track your parcel, and everybody is of course buying online, then you need to install this app. And then people think, oh, that's interesting, okay, because I didn't got that yet on my system. So first of all, they click on that link, the first failure. Then the second failure, oh, it goes to a nice website. Yes, that looks like DHL. This is okay. And then I can, download, okay. They click again, and they are going to download the APK file. Yeah. Second failure. And then they're going, third failure, install that APK file. Third failure. And the fourth failure, which is the biggest one, they are going to change, because at the moment when the application is installed, that app is installed, it's going to ask to change some of the settings of your phone. And they do that. Unbelievable. How stupid can you be? 4 failures, 4 things you shouldn't have done. And people are doing that. And I can't get that, you know. Okay, if you do the first thing, if you go to that website, okay. But if you download, if you install it, come on. But if you're really going to change your settings on your phone, and of course then it has everything it needs to have, and it can, well, at that moment it's listening on your phone, it's checking all your messages, it's checking your email, it's checking your text messages, it's even checking your pictures. So it's a serious kind of spyware, and it's also listening for, of course, what do you think? Passwords, which will be misused afterwards. So, the human, again, isn't it? Yeah, well. And then, of course, what about all those kind of things? You think, well, we've seen so many things, and actually I saw already one of the same slides from the former speaker inside my slide deck, which is the world's biggest data breach. It's unbelievable these days. It's nearly impossible to get out of it, you know. Possibly you're included in one of those. If you want to have a very nice slide, you definitely should go to that website. Informationisbeautiful.net, and you get this nice overview. In the beginning, about a couple of years ago, you got something like 2 or 3 blobs and 2 or 3 companies which were hacked, and now it's pages long. This is evolution, unfortunately. And it's everywhere. And also, we see much way to breaches coming from humans taking the wrong decisions. Now, cyber war. Actually, I thought I need to include something like this inside it, because also inside the cyber war, humans take the wrong decisions, in my opinion. And if you look at the cyber attacks we saw At least we saw, because there are so many attacks, of course, which have been seen already. But still, the cyber attacks we saw in Ukraine, we saw a couple of wiper malwares, of course, just by the use of phishing mails. So the phishing mails actually were used as the entrance to install most of the wiper malwares. So this is again a proof of humans making the wrong decisions. And humans make other stupid decisions. Because there is also, Ukrainians announced the launch of an IT army to fight off Russian cyber attacks. And I know the principle is maybe interesting, and I think we all know that war is not a good thing. And I think a lot of people, definitely all of us are, not really happy with that war, which is logical. And we are possibly also supporting Ukraine in some kind of way, which is good. But think about it, that if Anonymous is asking to help them, think about how stupid you can be as well. Because first of all, if you are helping Anonymous, or even a couple of other hackers asking really to help them out, first of all, it's like a flashbang you are throwing in the room over here. You're not helping the real investigators. You're not helping the real people who are defending you. You're not helping the security industry. So that's one thing. So I know the feeling, but still, think about that one. So first of all, it's a smoke, it's a flashbang kind of thing. Secondly, it's illegal. I know. Well, what is not illegal in a war, isn't it? Yeah, but still, it's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. Third problem is, well, if you do something like that, where is the line afterwards? If you're helping, if you're hacking or try to hack into Russia at this moment, well, it could be misinterpreted by the Russian government. So you could even, well, bring the war in a higher, on a different level, which is not a good thing. And of course, where do you stop afterwards as well? Because you stop afterwards, well, can you stop? Is it possible to stop afterwards? Because you make maybe now some decision, but afterwards you think maybe not realistic anymore about hacking maybe something, well, another kind of company. So think about it. So the common factor is, of course, always the same thing. It's the human. I've told this, and there are so many studies who are showing this to you. There is a study from IBM, there is a study of AZ Thought Lab, there are a lot of other studies actually. But you always can do something about it, isn't it? There are, of course, security solutions. That's one thing, and this is, of course, the most technical solution, and it's the most easy one to install. But still, you need to train people. You need to improve security awareness. And the only thing to do that is get them to go to trainings or to online trainings or to go to lectures like this one. Yeah, that's helping. That's actually helping. Now, security awareness is very, very important because you need to repeat it because things are changing. Not every attack is the same. Not every attack is the same as we saw, well, the past 30 years. So there is an evolution in those attacks. You need to repeat and repeat and repeat it. And the interesting thing is, what I mostly do is try to remember to click on the right things. I've not got any malware on all my systems in 33 years since the first one I got on my system. And just by taking the right decisions. And you also can do that. Maybe you should put something, well, remember it in a good way. And I have a good memory aid, You know I was talking about that floppy disk, you know, from 30 years ago. These days I need really to show it what a floppy disk is, because people don't remember it anymore. It's real history. Well, the interesting thing is, my memory aid is my floppy. Actually, I didn't throw away the floppy. It's hanging in my living room, that floppy. I still have it. It's one of the last remaining physical copies of the first ransomware. And that copy is really hanging in my living room, and it reminds me to make the right choices. And that's what you maybe can do as well. Take the right choices, put something on your living room or in your apartment or wherever you are, or next to your computer, and put something next to it to remember, do the right thing. And that's what we all should do. Do the right thing. Keep it, you know, transparent, make it easy for you, and I think it can really help you a lot. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions? Over there.
Hi, Eddy. Thanks for the presentation. I have a fast question. I'm still waiting for what were the solution for the first ransomware. How do you figure it out?
What
was the solution for the first ransomware?
The first ransomware?
How do you solve it?
How did I solve it? Actually, it was a very basic encryption. So there was not really because I'm not a cryptologist, completely not. So it's actually what it was doing. Actually, it was so it was trying to hide all the directories. And the directory names were replaced by actually a number or another figure. So you could easily try to find out how it worked. So it was really a stupid kind of encryption. But okay, it was 1989. Yeah.
Any further questions?
Is there another question over there?
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. I would like you to ask to what extent can you consider human fault? Giving as an example, the mail that you got from a journalist that was not actually a journalist. For example, if the number was exactly equal to the cell phone number of that journalist, how do you expect to notice that that is not a real email or a real file?
Exactly.
And not to click it, so it's...
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's very difficult to find out, is it real or is it not real? Now, of course, I'm mostly in contact with press, and this was something like, it came out of the blue. I talked with actually the journalist 2 weeks before, but you know, I got the same thing already. I got actually my PDF file. I got actually my, let us say, the article myself. So the thing is, what you can do, if you think something is a little bit tricky, you can just try, well, if you're completely unsure, and if that guy or that woman is reachable, phone him, or try to contact him in another way. Just try to find out, did you send me something? No. So this is a possibility. Sometimes it's very difficult, and of course, and that's the reason why we always have, of course, the technical solutions in place as well. If I would have clicked, theoretically, my technical solution should have done the good thing and should have blocked it. But you can't know, because it may be not, you know, no technical solution is, of course, 100% safe. And of course, not everything is detected, and not everything can be blocked. So it really depends, of course. But think much more logical. If you got something from somebody you're not expecting that then just think and go to him or to her through another mechanism. And that's the best way to deal with it.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. Okay.
Hello. I would like to thank you, first of all, for your presentation. And my question is, how can an institution like the University of Maastricht, right? I think it was Maastricht, the example that you
Can you
gave.
speak a little bit louder because it's...
Yes. How can a company like an institution like the University of Maastricht, how did the whole network, how did all the network got infected with the ransomware, with the malware?
I didn't got it completely.
You gave an example of an email
Yeah,
that a professor in the University of Maastricht,
yeah.
and then the whole network of the institution got compromised.
Yes.
How did that?
How did that really happen?
Yes,
Yeah.
they didn't have any kind of protection against that.
Yeah. Well, what we think actually is that the on the system that the first malware is, well, what came in actually was possibly not detecting actually that new kind of malware, and there were no kind of blocking mechanisms in place. That's one thing. Secondly, that person got administration rights on the system, so that means that you could install well nearly everything. So this is the reason why, for instance, the University of Maastricht was attacked by and could be attacked in that way. So it was a very easy kind of thing actually which make it happen. Of course it was just a backdoor which was installed on that machine, and afterwards there was much more work involved, of course, inside that attack. So it's not like, you know, the only kind of malware which was able to install every ransomware on the whole on the whole network. No, completely not. It was just the first kind of vector who made it possible to came inside the network at that moment. So, but it took several weeks and several months actually to install the real ransomware inside the whole university. Yeah.
All right, let's give another round of applause for Eddy. Thank you so much.